everybody. Campaign 2014. It was a long night.
It really
was. Long night getting in all those results from yesterday's election. And those results brought about a whole lot of change.
Oh, big time. And that's in spite of the fact that overall turnout for the state was low. Statewide, voter turnout was only 42% yesterday. Washoe County saw 51% voter turnout. And the registration of Democrats to Republicans made a huge difference in the results. Aaron Breen takes a closer look at who voted where and how it reinforces that every vote counts.
Swope is good.
Poll workers will tell you that voting was slow but steady through early voting and throughout Election Day. But in the end, it didn't add up to much of an overall turnout. According to the Secretary of State, the statewide turnout was 45%. And the 51% we saw here in Washoe County was higher, but it actually tied our 20-year low.
Voter turnout was abysmal. So it wasn't like the Republicans just showed up en masse. So Democrats stayed home.
Herzig says after distancing themselves from President Obama and his policies nationally, a lot of Democrats also distanced themselves from the polls here at home. And because of that, Republicans called the shots, especially in the close races, where the Governor Sandoval connection did help decide some close races, like the race for Secretary of State, where Barbara Sagavsky beat out Kate Marshall.
She draped herself with Brian Sandoval, and there's great irony there because she certainly wasn't a key supporter of Sandoval's legislative issues for the past two sessions.
The lieutenant governor's race, where Mark Hutchison, who had Sandoval's endorsement, won. And the race for attorney general, where newcomer but Republican Adam Laxalt beat out high-profile Democrat Ross Miller.
This is a major turnaround, and it just shows you the complete collapse of Democratic turnout in Clark County.
And that will also be seen in some major changes in our state legislature come January. Herzig says it was just the perfect storm to get the Republicans to the polls this election.
Republicans were more motivated. Republicans are, in a sense, higher yield voters. When there's nothing much going on, most people will say it's an older, less diverse voting public, and that was true. The initiatives, particularly two tax initiatives, and that drew more Republicans.
And here's an element voters in both Washoe and Clark counties seem often to overlook: the clout of the rural counties.
The rurals, they showed up, they always do. They're consistently Republican, and the Democrats stayed home.
So that puts a lot of new Republican faces in as leadership for this state, and Democrats focused on 2016. Because believe it or not, that election is just around the corner. Covering Campaign 2014, Aaron Breen, Channel 2 News.
And perhaps the biggest surprise from the midterm election was the shift of power in the Assembly, with Republicans picking up 10 seats and taking control. Paul Nelson spoke with some of our legislators and joins us now live from the newsroom with that part of our coverage. Paul, how shocking is this for Democrats?
Well, Kristen, it's a huge wake-up call for Democrats. Republicans will control the Assembly for the first time since 1985. Combine that with the GOP winning the Senate and Governor Sandoval winning re-election, the ball is clearly in their court.
The Assembly will please come to order.
The Nevada legislature met less than 2 months ago for the special session to bring Tesla Motors to the Silver State. But the Assembly and Senate will both have a red tint in the next legislative session.
2 months ago, I would have just laughed at that. A month out, I would have said, well, you know, they could win 3 to 5. When the early vote totals came in, it's like they could pick up 7. They could do it. They ended up with 10.
Republicans outnumber the Democrats 25 to 17 in the Assembly and 11 to 10 in the Senate, after one of the lowest voter turnouts in Nevada history.
This is a temporary situation, that this is not really a true reflection of what Nevadans feel about their state and where they think that they want their state to go.
The Republican vote determined many races, but the GOP victories also reflect a national trend.
With President Obama having such low ratings as president of the United States, and it continues to go down, people are just getting very discouraged with the policies and that the Democrat Party keeps trying to pass on us.
Governor Brian Sandoval won his re-election by 47 percentage points, tying the largest margin of victory in state history. It's the first time since 1929 that Republicans have held the governor's office and both houses of the legislature.
We didn't have a big top of the ticket. There wasn't a lot motivating Democrats to get out. I think the Republicans were more motivated on other issues.
Democrats and Republicans say they plan on working together to balance the state budget and improve quality of education and infrastructure.
We don't know what the economic forecast will be in December. Certainly the governor has suggested that we need to rethink how we fund education. And personally, I think that's a good thought.
And now that Republicans have control, the question is what they will do with it. And will this election have an impact on voters in 2016? The 78th legislative session begins February 2nd. Covering campaign 2014 live in the newsroom, Paul Nelson, Channel 2 News.
Boy, interesting next year and a half, certainly, Paul. Thank you. Okay, now to the national side. As the dust settles from yesterday's midterm elections, Republicans are planning how to use their momentum after taking control of the U.S. Senate, along with adding an even larger majority in the House. Democrats are adjusting to a new reality on Capitol Hill, and President Obama today is talking about how all of this will impact his final 2 years in office. Craig Boswell has the latest from the White House.
For the first time since President Obama took office, he will face a Congress with Republicans in control of both houses.
Obviously, Republicans had a good night.
The GOP picked up at least 7 Senate seats from Democrats and added at least 10 seats in the House of Representatives. The president phoned Senator Mitch McConnell, who is positioned to become the new Senate Majority Leader.
The American people have spoken. They've given us divided government. The question for both the president and for the Speaker and myself and our members is, what are you going to do with it?
The president has pledged to take executive action to stop the deportation of undocumented immigrants.
What we can't do is just keep on waiting.
It's like waving a red flag in front of a bull to say, if you guys don't do what I want, I'm going to do it on my own.
The president has invited congressional leaders to the White House on Friday to begin discussing some of the challenges that lie ahead. Both sides are facing questions about whether they can end the gridlock.
As president, I have a unique responsibility to try and make this town work.
The Democrat who counts is the President of the United States.
Republicans can still add to their numbers. Senate races in Virginia and Alaska haven't been called. There's a runoff in Louisiana and a number of House races still unsettled. Craig Boswell, Channel 2 News.
And a representative from Senator Harry Reid says he will likely represent his party as Senate Minority Leader with the new Congress is sworn in. And for much more on the impact of the midterm elections on the politics in the nation's capital, stay tuned for the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley up next at 6.
As we mentioned earlier, the final results of yesterday's elections in Nevada were not determined until early this morning, and that was due to a computer glitch in Washoe County. The error didn't allow absentee ballots to be added to the final count for several hours. Landon Miller shows us what happened and how it was fixed.
It was supposed to be a simple process. The results from the absentee ballots were tallied earlier in the day, but uploading them into the main system for final verification hit a snag around 11 o'clock last night.
The main server is just not accepting the results from us, so we're trying to figure out exactly where the error lies.
In total, there were 10,225 absentee ballots that needed to be transferred into the main system. That delayed the final totals for Washoe County. And 10,000 votes isn't a small number. It's enough to determine the outcome of certain races, like the Washoe County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, we were a little frustrated. Everything went so well, and then we had that little hiccup there at the end. But I have not personally received any calls from the candidates, and I'm not aware of any.
The problem was resolved shortly after 2 o'clock this morning. A technical team at the registrar's office had to work with Dominion Voting, the software company that handles the voting services.
Thank you. Our IT brain that we rely on so much, Brian, him and our software vendor being on the phone, they were able to retrieve that information. All the numbers matched right down the row.
They're looking into what caused the glitch and how it can be prevented in the future. Cutler says the votes were never in any danger of being lost because the county backs up each ballot to a separate system for memory.
We're just happy everything worked out okay, and we were able to get that memory out. Again, thanks to Brian and our team at Dominion Voting. So all's well that ends well.
Covering campaign 2014, Landon Miller, Channel 2 News.
And the race for Washoe County Sheriff between Chuck Allen and Tim Kuzanik was one of those impacted by the glitch in Washoe County because it was so close. In the end, Chuck Allen was able to edge out Tim Kuzanik with just 50% of the vote, winning by less than 850 votes.
It's just an incredible experience. The people that I've had faith in, the voters had faith in me. It was proven today when the majority of the votes were in our favor.
Now, Allen won despite being outspent by his opponent, Under-Sheriff Tim Kuzanik, 4-1. And while Under-Sheriff Kuzanik did not win, he said the experience has been great for him and he learned a lot. Allen will be sworn in as sheriff on January 5th.
Meantime, Wendy, the race for Reno mayor was much less close, with Hillary Shivi handily defeating Ray Pezzanella by more than 11,000 votes. After the election, she told us she will focus more on making sure her constituents are heard.
So one thing is I'll bring back the neighborhood advisory boards. The other thing is I finally feel like the doors at City Hall will be open to everyone, and now everyone will have a voice.
She says one of her goals as mayor is to continue to revitalize the city by bringing in new jobs and technology and work on blighted properties downtown. Putting a limit on spending is also part of her focus. Shivi will be sworn in as mayor next Wednesday, along with the newly elected city council members Naomi Dewar and Paul McKenzie.
And in another lopsided race, Washoe County School Board President Barbara Clark lost her bid for re-election, falling to political newcomer Nick Smith by a nearly 2-to-1 margin. Last night, he said he was thankful to be chosen by the voters.
My supporters and I have worked hard to get to this day, and I can't be more thankful for my family first, my wife Julia and my 2 kids, Aiden and Ethan.
Smith says his first duty is to gain trust and respect back from the community in the wake of the firing of Superintendent Pedro Martinez earlier this year. We reached out to Barbara Clark for her reaction to the race, but have not yet heard back from her. Veronica Frankel will also be a new face on the school board next year. She defeated Jim Shaw to win the District F seat vacated by Estela Gutierrez. Both she and Smith will be sworn in on the first school board meeting of 2015, which is on January 13th. And for a complete list of results from last night's election, including races locally and statewide and on the national level, just head to KTVN.com and click on the blue News Links button.